Dun, 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 dun. She's back. Hello. Here is a very brief introduction to the concept and practice of mutual aid. This video isn't going to go into the history of mutual aid, but if you're interested, definitely look into the Black Panthers, Zapatistas, Young Lords. So, what is mutual aid? At its basic level, it's humans looking out for each other, making sure needs are met without expecting anything in return. The term itself was officially coined by Peter Kropotkin in his 1902 essay, Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution. Like I said, I'm not going to get into history, but suffice it to say, humans have been practicing mutual aid for millennia with or without that label. Additionally, mutual aid is a direct action, so it's taken without permission from a higher structure. There's no permission like getting city permits to open a food bank. It's just direct exchange of services. A common tagline of mutual aid is solidarity, not charity. Mutual aid separates itself from charity in a few ways. So charity can be seen as a way for higher ups to decide who is deserving of aid. A common charity example is the rich giving to the poor. With mutual aid, there are no strings attached or eligibility requirements. People receiving aid are not viewed as morally lesser than those giving aid because it works both ways. And we recognize that poverty is not the fault of the poor, but of the systems in place that assert racism and ableism and labor exploitation, etc. So while charity is viewed as generous giving, it still upholds those systems that keep the poor and or vulnerable poor and or vulnerable. So mutual aid values empathy, generosity, and dignity. Another major characterization of mutual aid is that it's a horizontal structure, so there's no hierarchy, but rather consensus-based decision-making. And the ways people help each other might not be seen as equal in like a money sense, but that's okay because we're all contributing in different ways. You may have been hearing the term mutual aid more frequently in the wake of COVID-19. I would be remiss to say that if this is your first time learning about mutual aid, that is a privilege. Mutual aid is everywhere all the time. And certain communities, like the LGBTQ community, might be more used to mutual aid as a concept, and that's because certain higher needs for some communities are not being met from a formal setting. Someone who's in dire straits because they were fired from their job for being trans might not be in the mindset of waiting for politics or voting to solve problems and can't afford to wait for their immediate needs to be met, thus mutual aid. You may have engaged in mutual aid and not even know it. Because of the current crisis, more aid networks are being launched and more are being shared. Some are general, some are more centered around disabled people or people who are immunocompromised or people who are low income. So many people can't rely on a $1,200 check, even if they do receive it, to meet their needs. Mutual aid can manifest in many ways. Here's some ideas to get your mind going. Spiritual support, dog walking, translation services, childcare, giving rides, grocery shopping or pickup, password sharing of educational resources, creation of DIY public hand washing stations, making Facebook groups, organizing a rent strike, calling or video calling someone isolated who doesn't have a large network, like someone in a nursing home or in a prison, straight up Venmoing money to people, mask making, hand sanitizer making. I'm putting a lot of resources in the description and I hope you look at them. There's a Google Doc called Mutual Aid 101 Toolkit that has step-by-step information about making your own virtual aid network and even has like scripts of how to talk to people to get it started. Mutual Aid Disaster Relief has a COVID-19 specific zine on best practices for health and safety for mutual aid. So it has things like how to deliver items to someone in self-isolation, things like that. If you want to learn more about organizations doing this kind of work, look up Food Not Bombs, No More Deaths, Big Door Brigade, and if you need aid or would like to give some, Big Door Brigade has compiled a list of all of the mutual aid networks COVID-19 related in the US. So if you need a group or just want to see what's going on, find the groups. Cool. So I hope you enjoyed this. As always, I am not an expert. I'm still learning. And I want to end this with just a little blurb off of the guiding principles of mutual aid disaster relief. It's on their website, and I think it's just very well articulated. We seek as much as possible to break down the barriers between givers and receivers of aid. Everyone has something to teach and something to share, and we all need assistance at times. We seek to acknowledge, challenge, and subvert perceived and actual power imbalances, and use any privileges we have, including access to material resources, freedom of movement, skills, knowledge, experience, and decision-making influence, to support people's self-determination and survival in crisis and their long-term resilience afterwards, ultimately bridging the gulf between ourselves and others. Waiting for my notes to load. Stay safe, my lovelies.